somebody for I don't know how switchy. Look on cam. So is it recording? Hello. This machine makes veneer, so as far as I understand, the logs go through and it's sort of like peeler into thin little bits like this.
And where does the wood come from?
The wood comes from native forests in Tasmania.
So right now there's two women inside the mill who have locked onto machinery. They're shutting down the entire tar and veneer mill today. They're locked onto conveyor belts to stop logs from being processed. And they are taking a stand, willing to risk arrest and the consequences of that because they passionately believe that these forests need to be protected.
We're more than happy to stay and see this through and make sure that operations are finished for the day and that they aren't able to process any of these totally unsustainable trees that they're massive.
What we found by documenting it in the forest and also by official reports coming out of Forestry Tasmania and independent experts that tar ant continue to use forests of high conservation value. They have, throughout this entire negotiation process, continued to use forests that are of World Heritage value as well.
They call it aggregated retention, which means they just leave little scrappy bits, but that just doesn't work. Like it's still industrial scale logging that has this massive impact.
This company, Tar Ant, operating here in Tasmania, are selling their product internationally as environmentally friendly. They've actually claimed to their customers in Japan that they're getting plantation and purely regrowth timber. They've taken forests out of places like the Esperance, which is down in the Huon. They continue to take logs out of forests all across the state that are high conservation value forests, and it's been proven that they are in fact the key driver behind this logging.
But it was really hard to get that message out there to people to actually know that the forests are still falling. To get that message outside of Tasmania where it is really important because we do need that national and international pressure.
Dad started work up there about 1936.
Wow, 1936.
Up on the Raglan Range. And we worked that bush, had a sawmill up there, and camps there. We worked that bush until about 1961, I think it was, when we worked it out. And every tree, Kimberley tree, that's all that come off of Kimberley, every tree was dead.
Already dead before you took
it. Yeah, it was as grey as that, all the trees. Yeah, we couldn't drive to work. We used to walk across the top of the Raglan Range to get to work, get to the hauler. Well, in later years it was chainsaws, but in the early years it was bloody, crosscut saws. Yeah, yeah. And in fact, I've still got one of them. One of them old saws.
When did the clear felling practice start taking place?
Well, I don't know. That started when guns started. See what year that was? Well, I don't know.
And that would have changed the industry again.
Yeah, that totally changed it. Everything. Yeah.
How do you feel about clear felling?
That should never ever be allowed. Never ever be allowed. No, not ever. Not ever.
What does it do? What are the effects of clear felling a forest?
Well, in my book, it totally bloody will destroy the forest. Yeah.
We're in a clear fell. This is the first clear fell that I've been to. It's a little section in the forest that's been completely desecrated. There's logs just to the right of me piled up, and I've been told that a lot of them will be used for wood chips. And then there's all surrounding this area, there's beautiful native forests which hold such rich biodiversity. It's pretty depressing seeing this kind of destruction and that it's just going to keep happening. Today we've gathered here for an action to take some opportunities for photos to send to the media, to let people know in cities, on the mainland, around the country, what's happening in beautiful, pristine Tasmanian forests, to show people the destruction that's happening, and to hopefully get people to understand and get on board to stop it.
What we see in Tasmania is an industry that's uneconomically viable. It's actually cost the taxpayer money to cut down our forests. Forestry Tasmania continuously run at a loss. This is a government business enterprise, so they're propped up by the taxpayer's dollar. They record losses of about over $10 million a year, and that is taxpayers' money that's going into the destruction of these forests.
What us as activists on the ground really want to send a message to people around Australia is that we are still losing intact native forests to clear felling and burning here in Tasmania, and there is still a core part of that native forest industry who want to hold on and continue to log old growth forests. And we are here as activists and as forest advocates to say that in this age of climate change, when we're facing such a global ecological crisis, there is no room for compromise on these native forest ecosystems. The area of intact native forests across the globe is minuscule. And it's funny, in Tasmania there's that concept that there's heaps of forests. People see rolling hills of forests and they think that there's so much more to log and there's so much more to continue to put food on the table for the loggers to keep working in those forests. But on a global scale, it's different. Tasmania is one of those blessed places across the globe that has native forests that are intact, and as people across the globe are suffering impacts of climate change, we have a responsibility to protect those native forest ecosystems from industrial scale logging. Our focus has been on those high conservation value, World Heritage value forests for the past 10 years, and now our attention will be turned to the native forest ecosystems that are outside those newly listed World Heritage boundaries. And it's freed up our resources to know that that's been successfully listed as globally significant, and we need to now turn our attention to other areas in the native forests that are having environmentally damaging practices on them.
January was the hottest month on record, the summer was the hottest on record, and the sea surface temperatures around Australia were the hottest on record. We had a prolonged heat wave with very hot nighttime temperatures, and those sustained nighttime temperatures are indicative of warmer waters to the south of Australia, and that's what we saw.
At the Bureau of Meteorology, forecasters have been watching record after record tumble. But this was no ordinary heat wave. It reached up to 13 degrees above average.
So it is surprising to see a clustering of such strong events.
Okay, So how long have we known about this stuff for? This is my friend Sue. She was throwing out her old school books, and so I was having a read through her geography book, and I couldn't believe my eyes. So this is her geography school book from 1981, year 8, and it says, and I quote, "Trees and plants give us oxygen to make the air fresh and clean. The rainforest has more plants in it than any other parts of the world. Consequently, as the rainforests get cut down, we will have more carbon dioxide in our air. This could easily change our climate and environment." End quote. So what's the concentration in the atmosphere? 395 parts per million right now, today, and we're heading up to 450 parts per million. We'll hit that at the current rate of increase in about 12 years from now. So 12, 13 years, we'll hit 450 parts per million. So what we've got to do is we've got to get back down to 350 parts per million as fast as we can. Okay, so 350 is a good number, 450 is a bad number, and we're at 395 now and going up. When you add heat to the planet, it causes the rate of evaporation to increase. That puts more water into the atmosphere. When you've got more water into the atmosphere, it's able to absorb more heat energy. So you're basically putting more energy into the atmosphere. So the more you warm it, the more water evaporates, the more energy you can hold in the atmosphere. And so this leads to more extreme weather events. So how much has the average temperature increased so far? Since 1750, we've gone up about 1 degree Celsius. So my mates say to me, well, 1 degree Celsius, it was 10 degrees when I got out of bed this morning, it's 20 degrees now, that's 10 degrees difference, so 1 degree is no big deal, okay? Well, 1 degree is a big deal. So what happens is that we've had the Arctic sea ice melt, and the volume of that ice is decreasing, and so it continues to decrease. So with that ice melting, it causes problems with our ocean conveyor belts. It causes problems with the animals and stuff like that in the Arctic. There's ocean acidification that's happening right now. There's more extreme weather events like flooding. In 1970, James Lovelock and Lynn Margulis introduced the Gaian hypothesis, which explains that the Earth is a self-regulating living organism, and that's called a biosphere. So a biosphere means that the land and the air and the ocean all interact with each other to keep the Earth in a habitable state for us. And the great thing about a living organism is that you can kill it.
People who are bullies, big heads, bigots, and self-invested get up the ladder of power easier than those who are reflective, thoughtful, caring, nurturing, and self-effacing. You can tread, if you get to the top of the political power or business power, whatever it is, much easier if you can tread on the fingers and faces of other people. Well, it's our job to reverse that dilemma. And with the reflectiveness and caring and love of other people and the planet, be steely determined not to be trodden on and knocked out of the way by the bullies. That's a dilemma locally, that's a dilemma nationally, that's a dilemma for the whole 7 billion of us in the human race. And we've got to remember that one. If you're feeling bad or hurt or not up to it or can't stand it or it's depressing, have a think about that. It's our job, because we're on the right side of things, and it's dangerous always to say you're right. But I'm speaking for the biosphere here, as you are. It's our job not to be knocked out by that lot, who currently are in control of the planet. It's a plutocracy. Government by the rich. And rich means powerful. And our job is to supplant them.
So what we've done today is we've arrived here and the logging has stopped for the day. And what we're going to do is head down to the gate and stop work for the rest of the day.
If there was a viable alternative that could happen now, if this place closed down tomorrow and there was a viable alternative for these guys to walk into another job with the same amount of money, I think they'd be there tomorrow. But until there is an alternative, they have no option. They don't have options. They come to work. Rain, hail or snow or sleet or whatever, they come to work every day to put food on the table for their families. That's what their main interest is, to keep this community viable. So they have to get their money from somewhere. So if somebody else can wave the magic wand and come up with a solution tomorrow, I think that that people don't walk around with blinkers on. They're open to suggestions. So if anybody here can come up with that alternative, guess what? There's going to be, the way that we're going, there's going to be nothing to protect. There's going to be no industry here, so there's going to be no people. Who's going to buy it? I know who's going to buy it. People from far away somewhere that speak another language to me are going to come in here and buy this. It's already happening. It's already happening in this community.
So, as a grassroots activist, we're acting in response for our, obviously for our ecosystem and for our community as well. And this is around, there's social justice issues here, because when we have industrial scale logging, we got like private corporate profit goes out of the island, and there's very few jobs in pushing, for big machines, all the work that the big machines do. And with business we've had going down, like this most recent round of corporate welfare with the forest agreement, which just entrenches this appalling behaviour. Now this island, as it was set up, how it used to be before the industrial scale loggers really got their teeth into it, there were so many local sawmills, and a local sawmills, can support like a little village. That's quite a few jobs. And certainly it doesn't do anything like the sort of damage that the industrial scale loggers do, and the appalling waste, the astonishing, disgusting waste that that they make. There's been this opportunity all along for our communities to have these interesting, rich and real lives that make proper use with due care and consideration of our forest here. But with these huge machines coming in to take shiploads of logs and wood chips and stuff, they're just in for the grab. They just grab what they want. They just leave these appalling wastes. And
well, once you get away from the small family business, it's just gone. It's just gone in my book. The family just bloody all rape the industry. Tear it to pieces. Yeah. With the selectively logged, well, you work an area out and you go back there a couple of years after and you couldn't tell where you'd been. Yeah, natural, regrowth had taken over. Yeah.
So selective logging is a more natural process.
Oh yeah, by far.
And by the process of selective logging, you can still get really high quality timbers.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Leave the forest undamaged.
Oh yeah, my word, you can. Yeah.
So if you
selectively log, that's where you get the best of the timber, because you only take the best.
Well, we used to have a very viable forestry industry. That went for over 100 years. We don't have that anymore. It's been closed down for various reasons. I'm not saying that the practices of the forestry industry for 100 years was good, but you can't have change that's been going on for 100 years. You can't have change in 4 or 5 or 10 years. You can't do it. There's got to be a gradual change. You've got to make it so there's an alternative for people to stay in these rural communities. We have to have population here.
Is there anything we could do to encourage the industry to go back to a more sustainable way of
Oh,
working?
I don't know if anyone this day and age whether anyone can do anything.
Has there ever been any confrontations with politicians or the industry from like locally, like traditional Tasmanian timber workers to complain about what happened?
I think it's all in the politicians. I think the politicians are out of another world. Yeah, they're out of another world. They, I don't know nowadays, how the logging done, apart from the fact that the forestry handle it all, but just how it's done, well, I wouldn't have a clue. I don't know about the big crowds, how they get on, I wouldn't have any idea.
And we're about to destroy that great wild place for relaxing, for inspiring, for giving adventure, for making feel whole. We human beings who come from the wild planet, who've lived in wilderness through all our forebears, and who relate to nature like nothing else in terms of feeling who we are, where we come from, what it is that inspires us, what it is that relaxes us, what it is we're part of, which is the natural ongoing ecosystem of this one small planet and its biosphere. And that's a message that mustn't ever be forgotten. We're not the environment. We're the spokespeople for the environment. And if there's one thing that developers, whether they're wrecking the World Heritage precinct of the Great Barrier Reef, or James Price Point, or the Canning Basin, which they want to open up to coal seam gas, or the Darling, they cannot, the developers can never match the presentation of the natural beauty and the species which are there. The river was saved because it was able to be shown to people all over Australia, and they responded, not to me or to Alice or to people who were arrested, they responded to the beauty of that river itself, speaking through us all over the country. We have that advantage because people respond to the natural environment, as they do to clean air and pure water and good food, healthy food that's not toxic. These are the advantage that we have in a world where we're disadvantaged because the people who want to make money out of exploiting the planet are bullies very often. They don't get it. They've missed the bus on relating to the biosphere which gives them life. Whenever or whoever created this planet in this universe full of hundreds of billions of planets, and we're just starting to track down those which have, just like Earth in its perfect orbit around the sun, the potential for life and therefore awareness and consciousness and therefore the ability to change its biosphere as we have here on Earth. We've just got this one opportunity to make good with it. We've now decided to take management control of it, so the responsibility is ours.
There used to be 100 log trucks every day come through this town. Now there's none. We all agree, yes, the forest practices in the past were not good. Everybody wanted change. Okay? We were susceptible to change, but we don't have that forestry industry anymore. It's gone.
I think Tasmania suffers from an old age industrial concept of thinking that the old ways of doing things are okay. And I think that we have had it proven to us that there are ways to be able to make money for our community here in Tasmania through arts, through food and agriculture, and through ways that other places around the world have proven that you can make money. For our society to be moving forward, we need to be creating a resilient economy that is dealing with the fact that climate change is real and climate change is going to impact our communities. And continuing to destroy environmental ecosystems at an industrial scale is not the answer. It hasn't been the answer for a long time, and we need to transition out of those industries.
Feeling in the community about the transition to a more sustainable industry? Is there anything that's being proposed or discussed, or who's in charge of that?
Every time there's like the forestry agreement, there were representatives from this area that spent months and months and months and months and months at meetings to come to a consensus with all the people involved that this would be the way of the future. They were all in agreement with it. They were willing to change their past practices to make industry more sustainable and more acceptable to the wider community. So there is room for change here. People don't walk down the street with their blinkers on like this and go, no, we're not susceptible to change. We're not going to change. I've got a brain. We're all willing and able to accept change. Smithton in the next 12 months, guess what? There's not going to be one.
That's a Malaysian country. You're talking about foreign ownership.
I know that it's a Malaysian country and I accept that. I accept that to the utmost. I do. I would like to see every industry in Tasmania and indeed in Australia owned by Australians. But we can't. We can't own the business because we can't make it sustainable. We can't sell our produce locally.
So that's unsustainable, this business here.
A lot of my friends work here.
Yep.
Okay, there's about 70 people work here. Yep. I know most of them, if not all of them. I know that every fortnight they've got a few dollars in their pocket. Tourism's supposed to be the magic wand for Tasmania. The tourism industry is depressed. What other industry is there? There's a tract of land called the Arthur Palmer Protected Area just down the road here. It's in Circular Head boundary. There's a lot of businesses in Circular Head rely on the activities for that area because it's called tourism. But people come into this area. People come here, thousands, over 55,000 people a year go to the Arthur Palmer area for camping and all that type of stuff.
I've been very privileged to be studying life, studying human dynamics, human design, and meeting people over the course of my life that have been instrumental for making me understand better what reasons we could create to bring people together. And so all that we dream up at Recharge Kuranda are the meaningful, purposeful reasons for community to come together. And when we start focusing our energy on those questions, beautiful answers arise, and we find beautiful ways to engage our community by... it coincides, of course, with being a transition hub. And maybe I need to talk a little bit about Recharge Kuranda being the transition hub for Far North Queensland in Australia. We are the only transition community centre that is run and owned by the community, and the rent is paid by and through the community participating in the actual activities that take place in the hub. And one would say, well, what, is the community actively partaking in workshops? Now, one of the, if we go back to transition and what transition stands for, transition is basically acknowledging, and transition towns actually was born in England as a rather revolutionary concept, taking the concepts of permaculture much, much further and actually taking community action within community towns. And that's spreading all around the world at the moment, and we're just another node for that, another hub, and we're doing something that is uniquely different, and that's because we can do that here.
To keep this community viable, you have to have money. Any community survives on money. If you cannot provide jobs, you don't have money. We all can't be on the dole. I wish I was. I'm supposed to be retired, but I'm working 3 times harder now than what I am. I get very passionate about this community because I'm the president of the local RSL club. I know the heritage here. I know the people, the families and the people who've gone away and continue to go away to protect our patch.
The transition hub here in Far North Queensland, we called it Recharge Kuranda to reignite community spirit. And one of the wings of transition is food. Another wing is looking at water. Another wing is looking at energy. Another wing is looking at economy. There's another wing that looks at transport. Because what transition does, it acknowledges that the current trajectory path that we as a society are on is an unsustainable model. It is driven highly on petrochemical inputs. Let's just sum it up. Unsustainable. Boom. Done. We don't have to go into that. We don't have to educate people anymore about how unsustainable it is. People will just say, yeah, you're right. It's just simple, common knowledge. We all know it. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge? Are you going to therefore say, well, let's all massively plug out of the system and let's go live in the bush? Well, that would be great, but how is the rest of the community going to travel if you're just going to go away? Because they might not be in the awareness that you are in. So how we see transition and our responsibility of our awareness, of knowing that we are on an unsustainable trajectory as a society, we can only affect our local area where we live. And so local action with global awareness.
There's the farming industry. It's in a very depressed state at the moment. There's farmers here hanging on. This season we'll see there's 30 farms, major big farms in Circle Head, for sale at the moment. They can't sell them. After this milking season at the end of this year, guess what? There's going to be another 30 or 40 that I know of. Major farms that can't survive. They will close down. What are they going to do with it? What are they going to do with the land? The children don't want it because they don't want a defunct business that they can't make money out of. So they're going to advertise these farms far and wide. We're going to end up what's happened on the mainland. People who don't speak Australian, I've nothing against people that don't speak Australian, but I'd like to see Australian land remain Australian land. I'd like to see Tasmanian land remain Tasmanian land. These people who are hanging on by the skin of their teeth, most of them old people, want to retire and go about their business and have a very pleasant retirement, but they can't do it with debt up to here.
Absolutely.
It's called sustainability. It's called industry. It's called putting food on the table and money in the pocket so we can go up the main street and we can support our local shops instead of going up the main street and seeing 9 or 10 shops closed in one street. There's only 2 closed this time last year.
And so what makes the hub work here is that we have a local food network here in the region called Real Food Network. I accidentally am the creative director of that Real Food Network, so there's a bit of conflict of interest for the greater good, because I drive, together with a whole range of volunteers, a community-supported agricultural network, and we work with 86 different farming families around year-round, so around the seasons. And we source and distribute the locally sourced fruits and vegetables to our local community. We service 5 different community markets every week, and we distribute 100 odd food boxes on a weekly basis as well. We have, as one of the elements within the hub, a community farmers market here every Friday and every Saturday. The community comes because food is a quintessential aspect of our survival. The community comes to go and buy integrally sourced, locally grown, totally supporting the local community, the local economy, local farmers, local everything. They come in and buy their locally grown produce and take that home. The money that they pay to buy that food not only supports the farmers, but Real Food Network makes a donation to our Recharge Kuranda Community Fund. And we have a memorandum of understanding that 20% at the end of each week is being donated to Recharge Kuranda, because Real Food Network, being a social enterprise, highly values the broader implications of what localizing a food economy can do. And we're just an example of that. So we have a symbiotic relationship.
We can't sustain the rate that we're going on. In the town boundary of Smithton, there's 250 houses for sale. You know, 4 or 5 years ago there was probably half a dozen. That's an indication to me that this community is dying. We're going down the gurgler. There's no jobs, there's no money.
Everybody could say, well, we're living in crisis times. Yeah, but you know, the word crisis also means great opportunity in Chinese. And so and specifically my focus during this time in transition is that we want to thrive, and we want to create models in which community can come together and partake in that thriving. Because when we create reasons for the community to engage itself with things that are intrinsic values that people would simply gravitate towards, community markets, community-orientated events, family gatherings, and that creates the resilience. It's sort of like a tough word to use for heart-to-heart relationships between us as a community. And the whole concept of thriving, I think, is fundamental for us as a community to actually transition in this time with positive spirit, with an open heart and an open mind, and actually seeing that we can bring into being a new earth, if you wish, that brings out the best in all of us, as opposed to excluding a whole range of things before we can even start beginning to move forward. And that's I suppose the difference between survival and thriving.
And a woman who's slightly older than me, so that means very old, looked at me and said, Bob, sometimes I get a little depressed when I look at all this. And I said, without even thinking about it, your trouble is you're burdened with intelligence. And it's easy to be thick, determinedly thick, and not think about the consequences of what we're doing. It's harder to be intelligent and recognise the consequences and slow down. But it's our job to wear the burden of intelligence and caring, and to utilise the option of optimism. You can be optimistic, you can be pessimistic. Take your pick.
Because there's no singular model that actually will bring about the change that we truly and rightfully need to bring through at this time. It is all aspects of human creative endeavor that fall within those three principles that will bring about the new earth that you and I and our children and our children's children will live in. And we're very inspired to assist in that process.
Generation after generation, the natives perish at the hand of Babylon. Our coexistence with the land forsaken, for so-called progress in the congregation. We're taught to depend upon addictive poison and sold a dream idyllic isolation. Exploited weakness of the human condition. We're herded like sheep into a pen of corruption. For the water we drink and the air that we breathe, we all depend on the trees. Why the ignorance is inbred, men are confused between their wants and their needs. The government subsidise an antiquated trade to honour agreements for a contract that they made. A pitiful price paid for the lumberjacks' exports. Our growth is locked and chipped to stop a bloody war. Biodiversity, the lifeblood of the earth. The Western lifestyle strips the land for more than she's worth. The pagans, aboriginals and Africans, they hold the answers and they know it all along. For the water we drink and the air that we breathe, we all depend on the trees. Where the ignorance is inbred, men are confused between their wants and their needs. Instilled with fear spread through the television, conditioned deeply by our education, we'll reap the consequences of our industry. The walls are closing now, we've modified the sea. Without the truth we have a fear of the unknown. The magic's lost, replaced by faith in religion. A tragic massacre of indigenous wisdom. Self-fulfilling is the prophecy of Armageddon.